All right, so we're back at the shop this morning, Monday morning. Billy's busting ass over here, and I have welded up everything on this, I guess we'll call it an X pipe for the R8. I did remember to bring in my clamp this morning, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the V-bands welded up. But before I start purging this, and I also have the resonator mufflers on here as well, which I really wanted to bring back home, test fit after welding everything up, because things can move a little bit, and then made sure that everything is completely square and parallel on the height that each one of these comes over the frame rails, because that's crucial for getting the tips right. So now I'm going to build a couple of gusset plates with some dimple dies that go in between the top and the lower section of the X pipe for not only aesthetic reasons but also for rigidity. And then I'll also weld on one of my nameplates to give it that final touch. So that's what's going to happen here in a moment. Stick around with me and you'll get to see the final product for this section of the exhaust system. Once that's done, I got to bring this system back home and develop the tips that were coming off of it. The reason I do this in segments as opposed to just trying to tack it all together and weld it and assume that everything is going to be perfect is because the reality is a lot of this moves around and shrinks and shifts on you as you're welding. And when you try and do precise designs like this, it's best to just do it in segments so that when you're completely done and you're where you need to be on the back end, you're not off away from where you want to be. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I will also note that this is only something I do during the design process for something new. Now, once I have a jig built and I'm reproducing this over and over and over, I won't have to do that in segments because we'll have the overall design set. But based on moving things around, having to remove them, put them back on the vehicle, put them back on a table, things can move around when they're tacked and you don't want to have that issue. So we can do a real clean, rigid assembly and tack job when we have it on a jig. But since there's so much on and off that happens and things are not 100% tacked, meaning we don't put a ton of tacks all the way around the radius like we do now that we have things set, you only put one on each side and maybe 4 overall on each corner, so that if you do have to go back, break it, cut it off and change something, you're not dealing with so many tacks. So hopefully that makes sense as to why I'm doing things that way. It's just a process that I use to simplify being able to go backwards if necessary, versus having a final design where you add your pieces and you really start tacking them around before doing your final weld. And yes, they will shift around in the final weld, but since things will be pretty well set, you can maintain the shape overall. So just some further explanation. Hopefully you guys can hear me well, because I'm trying to experiment without mics, and also having this heater on in the background doesn't help, I understand, but bear with me as I try and do some trial and error to figure out how to get the best audio, and I assure you that in the long run we'll get there. So on to finishing up this section of the exhaust. Hope you guys are enjoying the video. here, as you can see, everything is getting very close to the finishing point. I've got the hangers added on at this point as well, and now I've got a back purge and finish welding all of the hangers. They're just simply tacked into place. The hanger system on the R8 is a bit odd in my opinion. They've got 4 different mounts that hold this thing, and I understand the purpose of those for the strength and the rigidity that's needed for the normal designs that have the heavier mufflers on them. But what I mean by interesting and different is they have a very long bolt that comes through the hanger, and that bolt goes through a sleeve, which then has a nut on the back side of it. And I don't know, it's just something that I haven't seen before. It's something that I think could be simplified in many different ways. I'm not really sure why they designed it that way, but that's the way they did it. And it's similar to the questions that some people may have when they look at some of the things that I designed and wonder why I did it that way. But we've got some nice gussets that are added on the top and the bottom here to give it some aesthetic appeal. And of course, the Hochman Fabrication is the V tag. So I'm gonna go ahead and get welding up on this so that it's finished up. Billy can then build a jig off of this, and then over the weekend I'll finish doing the tips that will slip fit inside of the resonators here. We've got the R8 here with the exhaust mounted up, and we were there finishing up the full welding of the new hangers that are now in place. And you can see I've got 4 hangers mounted in the original location on this design, which gives it plenty of rigidity. And the next step is to now finish off the tips that are going to then come over this frame rail, turn backward, and go out the rear, which is pretty simple and straightforward as far as the design perspective goes. I've made these a slip-on style joint right off of the resonator, and so they will slip in here and allow you to have the adjustability that's needed in order to get a really nice fit with your bumper. So that's the next stage, and that's what I'm getting ready to work on. I do really love hearing your guys' feedback on the work, and getting your opinion is really beneficial to me on both the design as well as the look. From a performance standpoint, I wanted to be very simple and make sure that the flow is very smooth, and of course not have any restrictions. And that's why I went with the bends from FDR Fabrication and some resonators from Vibrant Performance. We always have good results from those items. And from a design standpoint, I've also tried to keep it simple in the sense that there's been a lot of production on this design, in this model I should say. Since this is a 2012, there's probably 100 different manufacturers out there that offer this type of an exhaust system, meaning they offer a non-valve, a valve system. People have done straight pipes, they've done custom systems, and we do want to offer our own. And it's important that we understand whether or not we're making something that's unique, both in aesthetics and performance, that it makes sense for us to try and even compete with any of them. Because normally we don't design or produce anything that exists in the marketplace, but since this is new to us and we want to start working more with these kind of owners, we need to understand what's appealing to them. And there's a lot of strong players in the market that includes people who have been in the space for a while, and of course we want to stay considerate to that. So if we're going to enter the space, we need to make sure that we at least do so in our own way. We don't want to be following the path of anyone else, of course. So if you guys can leave comments below, that would be great. We also appreciate you subscribing, of course, as I mentioned before. And yeah. Grab the regulator, that's dual regulator, so that I could back purge things, because I know earlier I said I didn't have everything I needed here, but I got frustrated with having to be spread between everything. Ordered a new one to replace the one at the shop. Matter of fact, ordered 2 new ones. So now we've got backups. But now we're gonna go ahead and finish welding this bad boy, so we can get on to finishing up a jig and then cleaning everything up, refinishing it, and doing final install. And there it is, the final piece of the puzzle on this R8 exhaust that we've been developing. Some nice beautiful welds here. Try and capture them on camera for you. But this was the driver's side tip that's going to be sliding in right here, and it'll have a clamp on it. And it's demonstrated here minus the clamp. And then the next step to finish this thing off formally for our process is we're going to make a jig for this thing. So if anybody in the future wants to buy one, whether it be in stainless or titanium, we will launch this product formally with pricing. Overall, pretty much finished here. Just got to refinish the scuffing on the surface here, because that's one of our trademark finishes that we like to do, is put some tape over the weld to protect the color, and then just basically polish out around it so that it really makes the color of the welds pop. And that's it, man. So I'll be sure to obviously provide you guys all with a video of a startup and some driving so that you can hear how it all sounds. But right now I'm just waiting on the intakes to come back from powder coating. I need to finish up the carbon panel, which is what I'm planning on doing with the rest of my day today. That's gonna serve as the other visually appealing piece of the puzzle for the intake system, since the box is out of the way. But we've got the mounts built, everything is done on the exhaust system. I really hope you guys enjoyed the process that I documented as I developed this whole thing. Stay tuned for more videos like this, along with the product launch of the intake system and the exhaust system for this Audi R8 V10 application here. And I will be determining whether or not these parts do in fact fit other applications such as Lamborghini. But in the meantime, this one's done and on to the next one.